or start streaming. Damn. How long does it fucking take to fucking register this shit? God damn. There we go. And YouTube still failed once again to update my fucking thumbnail correctly. It also put me in entertainment, which is insane. I never ever streamed to that category. What the actual fuck? All right. Let's see here. Let me get this all set up first before I begin with the intro. I like the idea of the intro. It's like a preface. Okay. All right. That's all set up. We're good there. I gotta do Twitch. Okay, Twitch got things correct. Good job, Twitch. I don't have to do anything there. Pop out chat. That way, if I get raided again, I'll know. Pop out chat for YouTube. I wish the windows were automatically sized the same. That would be nice. It doesn't matter which one they're sized the same as. I'm gonna make them the same size as the YouTube one. Okay. I should probably move these to the other monitor. I'll be sitting down here, but I'm currently standing up at the moment. You know, for as much as I'm at the computer, you know, sitting down over time, not the best health decision. Even though I think most of us are, generally speaking, more productive sitting down than not. Standing up does take energy. Even if it's not like a huge amount of energy, it's still one thing tapping on your system, right? Like, in the best case, you could reduce the energy requirement for standing up to like close to zero, right? All right, so I got a lot of shit done yesterday, honestly. I probably downplay how much stuff I actually got done yesterday and in the few days before that, because there's just so much that has to be done in general. So we're gonna do a little intro here before I get started. But with a lot of the testing stuff kind of figured out now, with several in-game bugs actually fixed, and with a optimization concept going forward, I want to build things back to where they were. I want to get dungeon rolling again. I'd like a little multi-floor dungeon with enemies and items that I can pick up and use and equip and attack with. And there's going to be things that I have to do along the way that are tangentially related, but maybe not directly related. As an example of one of the optimization techniques, instead of iterating over every single entity ID, I'm actually storing the living NPCs on a per floor basis at the moment now. But I have to do the corresponding component where we keep track of the list of the dead NPCs on the floor as well. The reason why we do this is because during the NPC update loop and handling loop, we iterate over every entity ID at the moment, and we check to see if an entity is an NPC. And if they're not an NPC, then we skip them, and if they are an NPC, we handle them. But wouldn't it be nice to get rid of that if statement? Wouldn't it be nice if we didn't have to check if it was an NPC and we just knew out of the box it was a valid NPC? Well, we can do that. But there's a catch. Whenever an NPC dies, we will have to remove it from that list and perhaps add it to a second list. And that's okay. I think that's reasonable. I think that's doable. I think by creating a fault-tolerant system, in other words, a system that appropriately scales to a bounded size and appropriately handles and rejects inputs where necessary. So, enough rambling. Time to jam.
Listening to Evil Dojo Dark Mage in the house with the sick flow. Listening to Evil Dojo Dark Mage in the house with the sick flow. Listening to Evil Dojo Dark Mage in the house with the sick flow.
even feel my stare. Why try? I can do the shit anyway. So, cash in hand, we ain't got no time to play. Oh no, no, I can't do this alone. Oh no, no, I need that evil dojo. Oh no, no, where the fuck are you, dark mage? Oh yes, baby, I need that evil dojo. Hey you, I've been looking for you everywhere. So cold, you can't even feel my stare. Why try? I can do the shit anyway. So, cash in hand, we ain't got no time to play. Oh no, no, I can't do this alone. Oh no, no, I need that evil dojo. Oh no, no, where the fuck are you, dark mage? Oh yes, baby, I need that evil dojo. Oh no, no. Oh no, no. Oh, oh, no.
Greetings. Welcome to the dojo. I've had a funky couple allergy days, so if I sound kind of congested, it's because I am. And so I can talk to you in the stereotypically nerdy voice like this. You know, it's like whatever. All right. We have something cooking. We've been using the automated testing mode for the last couple days, so I think maybe I should turn that off. Has it been a couple days? I may have actually only enabled it at the beginning of last stream. All right. How do we get started here? Let's disable testing mode. How do we do that again? I know there's somewhere in the code where I've done this. I just have to remember where. So when in doubt, when in doubt, grep it out. I'm probably defaulting it to true. Yeah, here. Okay, so all we gotta do is just like turn off the flag when we build it. So we will do that here. In our little automated testing loop dealy, or automated compilation loop that I left running. All right. At some point I'm gonna have to figure out a better way to do the item display, because managing items this way might get annoying if you don't have like stacks. What's up, you Xiaohan? How's it going? All right. So this feels like it's working well enough. So let's go ahead and go back to dev and merge df NPCs, which was that first optimization I was talking about at the beginning of the stream before the intro. So what we're going to do next, take a look at, and actually the problem there is, like I said earlier, we're now managing, and it's not a problem, it's more like this is what we're going to do next. We're now managing a shared pointer vector entity ID of living NPCs. We need to also have dead NPCs. There's our accessor for it. We also need, maybe copy these. Now, the only time we would have to remove a dead NPC is if like a corpse gets destroyed or something like that. Hey, K-Dud, how's it going? Thanks for returning. Hope everyone's having a good day so far. I'm just barely getting started here. I'll be able to stream for a few hours at least before I have to meet with a student later tonight. One that's been a little bit difficult to schedule. Their mom keeps changing the time on me without like telling me. Flux Twister. How's it going? Let's see. Okay, so during tile and knit, wait, no, DF and knit. No, it's just in knit now, right? Okay, so now we've got that, but we aren't like using it yet, right? So, oops, when an entity dies, I think STL3 is worth checking out. Like, you know, it's always important to pay attention to major releases and stuff like that, but at the same time, one of my reasons for moving from SDL2, for instance, is whenever I get around to using 3D stuff. Like, first of all, have you checked out raylib yet? Because my dude, you need to check out raylib. It's getting so much good coverage, and the number of users has increased by tens of thousands since I started using it last year. Actually 2 years ago. Yeah, I started using it at the beginning of 2004. And I began using it as, was it at the beginning of 2004? It was either 2004 or 2005. One of those two. I've been using it a while at this point. After having used libSDL2 for years and years before that, trying to make stuff. There's just so much out of the box that raylib provides that make life so much easier that you don't have to worry about shit. All you have to do is just accept that there's certain ways of doing things. And by keeping things basic and simple, you can build up some really cool stuff. That said, though, doing 3D in libSDL2 using like OpenGL shit, it's a fucking pain in the ass. And I really appreciate raylib's wrappers for 3D content. In fact, the few 3D like raylib videos that I made, and you can check those out on my channel, are to this day my most watched videos. In fact, every single day, something like 20 people view those videos still. And they put out like over a year ago. So take that in consideration, is that like I myself have made videos about how easy it is to like do basic 3D stuff in raylib, and you can even do complicated 3D stuff. You can do point lighting. You can do you can load in Blender like, you know, I don't know the right word, like mesh, you know, like fucking skeleton animation shits. You know, you can load textures onto those, and then all of a sudden you've got full 3D. I'm not a 3D modeler myself, so I haven't really dug into that department, not to mention the workflows. I have my own ideas for 3D and for 3D games that I want to make from a programmer perspective that really seek to minimize how much like manual human modeling is done, right? One of my goals in this, for instance, is I have an idea for like a really cool like interstellar, like in deep space, like space combat game where like the ships are, it's kind of like I really want to fuck with voxels, honestly. That's really what it comes down to. you know, like one of the things I want to do after this game is fuck with voxels. I don't have a clear idea for what the second game's going to be yet, but that's still a long ways off. But I'll probably be doing it in raylib, God willing, because it's been so good. And hopefully in the future, we can get support for like things outside of PC and phone, right? Because at the moment, you know, like anything you build will run in a web browser. So anything capable of running a web browser and having access to WebGL is able to run raylib stuff. So I don't know. That's just me. All right, what are we doing? So whenever a entity dies, so for instance, in tri-entity attack, we have a very complicated series of steps that occurs. It does not rely upon other libraries. It's completely, well, okay, like it, I think you need like GLFW, like here. I'll do you a favor. So here's the raylib source code, right? Like it's all on GitHub and I pull it down so that I can build it myself. I have to build two versions of it. One of them static, one of them dynamic. For the builds that I test with here on stream and when I'm actually developing, I build the game as a local binary and it runs using the shared libraries. But when I build it for the web, it uses the static library in conjunction with EMCC in order to do that. So this is the entirety of the raylib source code. Like, that's it. It's pretty thin. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. It works. Everything that you've seen me do is done using this library. Here's the make file. These are all the different platforms that it builds for. Windows, Linux, Mac, FreeBSD, OpenBSD, NetBSD, Dragonfly, Wayland, X11, Win32, 60 and 64-bit. RGFW, I'm not sure what that is. Also builds on Raspberry Pi. Linux DRM subsystem. Android. I forget what the dependencies are out of the box. Yeah, I think GLFW is the go-between for all the 3D stuff, right? But essentially, like, you initialize a window, and that window grabs some context from whatever system you happen to be on. But I think that's like the dependencies are super minimal. That's the point I was getting at. Okay, so we're making dead NPCs now, and we want to. Oh, you're welcome. No, I'm really hype about raylib. Like I don't know what the appropriate way to be hype about something is. All I can really do is just speak positively about my experiences with it, because they are ongoing positive experiences using the library. I know you'd be happy to hear me say that, and I'm not trying to like stroke his ego or anything. He just genuinely made something that good. But that said, maybe in the future I'll explore like making my own thing, because his library is written entirely in C, and I've been really liking C++, and I'm always curious about ways to like utilize things in ways that might make things better, because I'm really happy with the component table that I've created, and it works really well. Lookups are incredibly fast. It's extendable in a way where like I can just add new components whenever I think about them. And the amount of code that I have to implement for that's very minimal. So when we go to attack, a bunch of stuff happens, right? One of the things that happens is that an enemy might get killed, obviously. So let's step to the part of the code where that actually handles. So if the attack's unsuccessful, we handle it. If it is successful, or if the attack like succeeds because you successfully rolled and beat their armor class, then for some reason this should never happen. You should never process attack results on a, like, you should never have a situation where you roll against a dead entity, because that would effectively just count as a touch action, which for I mean, you could always fail that roll too, I guess, just trip in attempting to do that. That would be a fun thing to implement, but I don't have a trip animation. Okay, so here's what happens here. All right, so whenever an NPC is killed, the attacker gains XP and the target drops its inventory. When we set dead true, we need to actually remove it from the living NPC list. And at a certain point, there will be like bring back to life type mechanics. So how do we do this? First, let's see if we have access to the dungeon floor. We have not pulled it up in this method yet. So what we need to do is get a reference to the dungeon floor that we're on. So a shared pointer dungeon floor now. get the current floor. Okay. Then df pointing to remove living NPC. Target ID. df add dead NPC target ID. I like C++, but it's hard to predict what's going on underneath the hood. That's not true. It's not hard to predict what's going on underneath the hood. It only becomes hard if you begin to make extensive use of templates. And especially the error messages. One of the original reasons I didn't use C++ for so long was I was convinced that C error messages were a lot more deterministic based off of a blog post that I read. And it had kind of convinced me, oh, wow, I can solve bugs much more easily in C than I could in C++. And so I thought, maybe if I limit myself in this way, I can avoid some of the harder things that might come from attempting to do those sorts of things. And that worked for a very long time, but then it became to the point where for every single, like, if you had only seen the old code base, dude, you would immediately understand like why I made the decision to upgrade to C++. And it's all centered around the component table and how I actually handle components. The way that I used to be doing it, right, like in the C version, was that I wonder if I even still have, I probably don't have the, I don't have the old hash table object anymore. It's probably still in the commit tree though. It's a very long time ago. But essentially, if you don't have a structure like this, then effectively, like, every access for every component is like a lookup into a hash table, right? And when you go to look up an entity in a particular look up if if you go to look up whether or not a component has a certain entity, or entity has a certain component, whenever you go to look up if a entity has a certain component, you have to have an associated hash map for that. And so for every component, you have to have its own hash map. And so having to manually implement a hash map for every single component becomes very expensive time-wise and energy-wise. And I thought, this is fucking annoying. It would be so much more easy if I had a data structure that allowed me to do this. And that's when I remembered, oh, C++ has this thing called unordered map right here. Now, unordered map can be used I mean, it basically is a hash table, right? You have a key that you use to look up some value, and you can associate a type with that structure so that the key has to be a certain type and the value has to be a certain type. Very convenient data structure, right? And I realized, oh shit, I have to do this for every single component still. Every time I want a new component, I'm going to have to add a new map. And before I knew it, I had like 40 something fucking maps, unordered maps, all declared in the game state. And I thought, this is ridiculous. So instead of having like, just to give you an idea, like I'll give you a little visual difference here, right? So the way that the component table works and the way that it used to work and the way I converted it to this actual new system is because we were storing something like a shared pointer to an unordered map to a entity ID, and then like say string for name, right? So we're doing something like this, and that's like one component like one table, right? For just names, it's like the names table. Now imagine now we also want to have like hit points, right? Very straightforward. You just declare a new map. Now imagine we have to do this for every single different type of thing. So like think what's another data structure or another value? I'm using vec3 for damage, I think. So like initial damage lookups and stuff like that. Let's say an entity may or may not be a weapon, so it might have a weapon type. So imagine, you know, like we're having to do this for every single fucking component. So just imagine this, imagine this kind of situation where you have like this many different components that you're having to fucking have a like very concrete definition for. That's kind of exhausting too. And I actually solved this problem with the component table. Now this component table is special because what it is an unordered map from a type to a shared pointer to a void data structure. So just like a raw shared pointer. And what's actually stored in this, in each one of these, is an unordered map. And they're different unordered maps depending upon what type you're actually looking up. I vibe coded a lot of this out. There's a lot of syntax here I wouldn't have been able to think of, but I tested it out incrementally. I fixed it. It works. I've tested it. It's very strong. It has very few moving parts. I'm explaining why right now. If you're just now tuning in, you might have to rewind a little bit if you can. I don't know. I'm not about to repeat the reasons for raylib because I've already explained those, but I'm in the middle of explaining why C++. So pay attention. I'm not going to repeat this stream, but I'll probably end up repeating it in future streams, obviously, because I'm really hype about the data structure. So I just explained, if you weren't paying attention, imagine that you have a component table situation like this, where you have to declare a unordered map for every single type of component that you have to implement, right? So instead of doing that, I declared, or I made a class that contains a unordered map of unordered maps. It's like a dictionary of dictionaries in Python. And here's why this is cool. There's very few moving parts. Get store is a function or method on the class that returns the appropriate unordered map depending upon what type you're looking up. This is used internally by the set method and the get method and the has method and the remove method. So the set method depending upon what type you pass in, just sets the component for that type. So as an example of this, whenever we create an NPC, we set the type of we set the entity type to entity NPC. We set its sprite move to a rectangle containing all zeros. We set its dead parameter to false. We set update to true. We set the direction facing to down right. We set attacking, blocking, block success, and damage to false. We set texture alpha to 0 so that it fades in. We set the inventory to vector of entity IDs. We set the equipped weapon to invalid because it has no weapon equipped at the moment. We set that it's not aggro by default. Set a default vision distance and hearing distance of 3. We set its level to 1. Set its experience to 0. And we define some tactics on it so that it has some predefined actions that it takes as it's moving around. Then we assign that value. So these are all components, and all we have to do to set each component is call the set method. Then whenever we want to go retrieve the method, a value, we have to call get first, and get returns an optional. So we have to verify whether or not the thing returned is something that actually contains a value or not. Because it's possible that you might go to look up a component on an entity and it doesn't have that component. And in those cases, you have to handle it appropriately. And it could be for any reason. It could be because a certain type of entity doesn't have a certain component by definition, or because of a programming logic error. But in either case, so long as I adhere to this pattern of properly checking for whether or not certain things actually contain real values, we can avoid some bad problems logically. So has checks to see if a component exists for a given entity. So the way it works is it first gets the unordered map for the kind that you're passing in. And it checks to see if there's an entry for that entity. Is there a map? Like does this map contain a value for this entity? And if it's not equal to the end of that map, because if it equals n, that implies that it wasn't found. I'm not a genius. Shut the fuck up. If anything, I'm like genius light. That's how I think about it. There are like way smarter people out there than me. For any intelligence and smartness that I do have, it's because I paid attention to people smarter than me. So take that into consideration. Find skilled people that you enjoy listening to, and then study the fuck out of them, because that's how you get good. That said, I've been programming for 30 years. So there is a time component there too, right? Like, I can't say I'm not experienced at this point. So there is a value, or there is like a level of effort where I didn't start off this smart, you know what I mean? So it's like, what is a genius? Like really, consider this. I like Steve Jobs' quote. I forget exactly what it was, but it was something to the effect of, imagine a world where everyone is exactly as smart as you are. Like, what if everyone was of the same intelligence? Like, what if everyone is capable of understanding concepts? And I think that's true too. I think that people who say that they're not math people, it's like, the only people who are not math people is that kid in China who like drank lighter fluid or gasoline until he couldn't do like basic arithmetic anymore. Like, most people are capable of anything. So be careful who you elevate and who you use those words on. Just take it with a grain of salt. Yeah, exactly. It takes all types. You know, like the way I think about it is everyone in the tech space comes with their different perspective. There is no one way to do anything. There's so many different options. Exactly. And besides, you can't say I'm a genius for this code because, like I said, a lot of this infrastructure right here, these lines, were in fact written by DeepSeek. But that said, though, the version that DeepSeek created was actually throwing an exception on this line right here. And I had this insight, oh shit, maybe we can use optional here. And sure enough, you can return null opt, and that's effectively like an option like type that contains no value. So whatever calls get has to check to see if that's like good, right? So as an example of this, right here on this line, I go to grab a an entity type component off of the ID entity, the entity with ID. And one of the things you can return on an optional is a value or some other predefined value. And this is a very easy pattern instead of having to like do something like auto maybe type equals something like this. So you could do something like this. And this is kind of like more Rust stylish. Wait. Oh no, not value. Yeah, so this would be kind of Rust style, right? Is like grabbing some optional and checking to see if it has value. Yeah, Myers-Briggs is kind of old at this point. I think I took Myers-Briggs type tests when I was a teenager. I generally get int p or int j. It usually fluctuates back and forth over time. I never get e. That just straight up not. I don't know what the fuck kind of flip in my brain I'd have to get e, but shout outs to fellow INTPs and INTJs. So instead of doing something like that, you can actually just do this. That was the point. So this is how you would actually use the component table. So now that we're actually removing entities from there, I'm thinking maybe we can actually add it to the debug panel. So like, we could add a thing here. Something like living NPCs on floor. And then dead NPCs on floor. So those would be the last two variables in the list. So we'd do something like d.get current floor dot get living NPCs dot size. Oh, is it pointing to? Okay, and then dead here. You should always take those tests with a grain of salt too. Like, never let some online computer program tell you who you are. You know, what a terribly reductionist view of the human condition. Like, oh, yeah, I actually have this book that I need to get back to reading called Personality is Not Permanent. And I like that because, especially as I get older, you know, I have to kind of step out of my shell a lot more in order to just do business. You know, like, business is a very social thing. And even if you're someone who's like super technically inclined, kind of like myself, you have to be able to engage with others in a way where forward progress on things can be made. Oh yeah, we killed the compilation loop, so we're gonna turn test off, turn music on. And we should see 2 new values in the debug panel. I'll have to move my my camera for y'all to see them. Yeah. Okay, see right there? We got 16 NPCs on the floor. 0 of them are dead at the moment. So whenever I go to kill one, we should see the number flip to 15-1. I have a lot to say. Especially since I'm also an indie dev and in this space. I think it's hard to get onto Steam. It's there's a bit of a hurdle. One might argue $100 isn't a lot, but just like with like the App Store on Apple, I don't know about the process on Google. I haven't done it with them, but I have gotten stuff onto the Apple App Store before, and it was a tedious fucking process, dude. Not only do you have the full development of the app itself, but even when the app is ready, you have to get a bunch of stuff lined up. You have to like get a bunch of specific documents. You have to do shit with like SSL certificates. You have to like get cryptographic signing keys, and you know, you have to pay this developer fee every year, and you know, like you just have all this shit that you have to do. And it's similar for Steam, whereas I didn't have to do nearly any of that fucking shit just to get my content up onto itch. Now that said though, I've only had one purchase of the game so far. Someone was very generous and paid $10 for it, and I appreciate that. But that said though, people aren't, even if people are playing the old demo that's currently up, nobody's really paying for it yet. And I think it's hard to monetize games unless they're like really popular and get like some sort of front facing exposure and are very well done and fun and engaging. And every so often you're going to have like a game that bubbles up to the surface and ends up being very good in comparison to other games that are out there. And then they get like exposure by like a streamer or someone and they explode even more. And for those individuals who get that level of success, I think that's it. That's great. But it's the kind of thing where the space becomes competitive. You've got more people making games now than at any other time in history. And it's only gotten easier and easier. So the barriers to entry are going lower and lower. Now, this has positive and negative side effects. One of the positive side effects is, of course, it's easier for people to make games. But on the other, you've got this situation where someone in the middle of developing something might come across a logical hurdle that they don't know how to deal with or how to optimize for, or how to like make faster or better. And the tools that they use to build the thing could get in their way. You know, I'm not a big fan of Unity. Like, the fact that they make you log in just to use their product is absolutely fucking repulsive to me. I can't stand that concept. I have to sign up to use Unity? Go fuck yourself. You know what I mean? I didn't get into game dev to like be locked into some shit like that. It's like, oh, what? It's like, I'm a game dev. What do you work in? Oh, I work in Unity. I work in Unreal. Or it's like, okay, well, did you make anything cool? Because I have played some cool Unity games. One of my favorite side-scrolling shoot-'em-ups, an indie game, is called Stir Eden. It was made in Unity. And even that guy didn't make like shit for money. Like, it wasn't enough to sustain, as far as I know. I remember seeing him post on Hacker News a while back, like years ago. And I just remember thinking, oh man. And I've actually bought that game twice. That's how good it was. I bought it on the PS4 and on the Nintendo Switch. Yeah, I think life is rough in the age of capitalism, where corporations with millions of dollars and the ability to, like control both marketing and like exposure, and really they make it difficult for individuals, like small teams, small companies. That said, there have been some very big small studios, or rather big small studios that have hit big. I don't know that they necessarily count as indie at that point. Right? Like, it's similar to like why I'm not on Windows. You know, Windows is a very constraining environment, and apparently it's just getting worse and worse over time. And I read about the decisions that are made with their products, and I'm just like so glad that I'm not like caught up in that normie rat race to be forced into using all of those shit products. You know, at any opportunity, I try to avoid using Windows products. That said, I still have a GitHub account. I said I still used Copilot for several years. Most people are using Windows, and it is what it is, but at the same time, anyone who's been paying attention to Windows since... So I've been using Windows a long time. I started on Windows 95. 95 was okay, and XP was okay. And Vista was meh, and 7 was and 10 was like, ugh. And 11 is just like, fuck it. So I've watched Windows slowly fall from whatever grace it might have had, but even for the moments of grace that it did have, Linux was still leagues, eons ahead of it. Even in 2004. You know, like they talk about this year is going to be the year of the Linux desktop. I've been Linux desktop since fucking 2004, 2005. Not the whole time. You know, there was 10 years I used Mac OS. And even Mac OS is better than Windows in a lot of ways. Here's one. When you go to buy a Mac machine, you have Linux tools and a terminal right out of the box. You can boot up a fresh, brand new Mac machine and immediately start writing Python. Straight up. You can immediately start writing C and C++. Straight up. They don't stop you. They don't get in your way. That said, if you want to do like iOS development and shit, yeah, you gotta download Xcode or whatever. But you can't even get to that point in Windows without having to install a bunch of extra bullshit. I've had problems with Linux, especially in kernel modules compatibility. That sucks. There has never been a... First of all, I've been very lucky. I've never run into kernel problems like that. Very rarely have I run into problems with modules, if like ever. It's very rare. I'm actually like I've got an NVIDIA 3080 doing all of this streaming on. It's run very well. Linux drivers are not bad in Linux space right now for graphics cards. You know, like there's two types of people when it comes to tech, right? When you run into a problem, do you try to figure out what the actual problem is and fix it? Or do you give up and try to find another solution? GPU profilers suck on Linux. If you got a spare machine, I would recommend installing Linux on a secondary machine and playing around with it, or running it in a virtual machine even. You have no reason not to use Linux. Even if you're forced to use Windows as your host OS for some reason, you have no excuses. I don't want to hear, oh, I can't use Linux because of this, or I can't use Linux because of that. You have no excuses. Just like the people who say they're not math people. Bullshit. So, sure, you might have had problems getting it to run as your host. That's totally acceptable. You might have some insurmountable problem that even after digging into, you literally can't solve for some reason. That happens. It's rare, but it happens. But that said, though, bitch, you got WSL too. Don't tell me you can't run fucking Linux. You can run Linux as a subsystem on Windows. Real talk. All right, so after we so now we're maintaining the dead list of NPCs, and we're actually removing the NPC from the living list and putting them into the dead list. Look, I've been doing this shit a long time. You don't even know how hard shit was in 2005, dude. Back then when we had when there was virtually no NVIDIA support. And I had to get in and manually hand configure NVIDIA kernel module shit, right? Had to manually specify the screen dimensions and what device to use and all of this shit. Nowadays you just run a fucking installer. Unless you got some real critical problem with your hardware, or you're running something really weird, I just don't see how there's any blockade other than getting stuck because you don't know what to do next. You might get to a point where there's some error thrown, and that's just how it is sometimes. There is a thing I need to do. The create orc is not working exactly the proper way at the moment. Create orc at with calls create orc with okay, maybe this is actually correct. I don't necessarily want to hard code this. This is something that could be passed in from monster init. No, S key is wait. It's also switch direction. So if you press S once and then you press any of the other direction keys, the character will turn to face that direction. If you press S twice, it will count as a wait action. So SS will wait in place for one turn. But no, the so it's Q W E A D, no, yeah D, and then Z X C. So those are your 8 directions right here. Q W E A D Z Z X C. So to change direction, you press S. To wait a turn, you press SS. It's in the instructions at the beginning of the game. So to move around, you press any one of those. I will be adding in numpad controls again soon, as per a request from a fan. At the end of the day, I want the controls to be configurable, because everyone's going to have a most preferred way that they want to play. So I want, you want the player to be able to custom configure the controls in a way that they best enjoy playing. I'll get to all that. Oh, right. All right, so why is this not liking this? Okay, here we go. Let's yank this again. Do I have experience in other software development fields? Yeah. I did web development and mobile software development for a while. And I also did, and sometimes still do, security and penetration testing. Okay, why doesn't it like that? Wait. What makes I stick to game dev? When I was a little kid, one of the first games I ever played was Super Mario Brothers, and it was my first memory, in fact. And as far as I know, it's basically like when I began living. I had two thoughts as a 3-year-old kid before I could really vocalize them. Where did this come from? And how do I make things like it? And eventually that led into programming, and it was all been with the intent of one day being able to make a game. And now it's, you know, like I'm further along in any of my game dev attempts than I've ever been. And so I want to push this to as far as I can. Only we figure out this bug here. Okay, it's not yelling about that. That's good. Thank you. Appreciate that, Riyadh Dev. Ah, there we go. What a nasty looking function. but this will effectively create an orc with a dagger and a potion on every loop through. So one of the things that we're working towards by doing this is the ability to customly set what something is what someone's equipped with at creation time. So I used to have a bunch of templates for this. For instance, select a random weapon. Like maybe they have a potion or not. But let's start with one. So the initial width and the height of the dungeon corresponds to like the actual bounds of, you could think like the palette or like the canvas. So if we want to keep this kind of small and tight, a 32 by 32 gives us 8 4x4 areas. Eight by 8 4x4. So when we go to initialize the, or when we actually go to create like each floor at the moment, we're just hard setting a giant area equal to the width and the height that we pass in. But if we wanted to be more creative like we used to be, so if we assume that we're always passing in like a width and a height that's divisible by 8. And even then, like we could even start with an even smaller. We could go back to 16 by 16. And so this would be 4 by 4 by 4 areas. So let's hard code something in. What advice would I give to young programmers? Practice often and always be learning. These AIs can't take your jobs if they don't work. These AIs are only going to cause problems in the long term, more problems than solve. Do not be afraid of the of all that stuff. Well, as recent examples within the last year, there have been multiple applications that were launched and in active use by lots of users that had completely open database credentials to a point where an unauthorized user was able to access and dump the personally identifiable information for, I think, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of users. And I think there was a good chance that application was vibe coded. So that's an example of such a problem, right? I could start over again. Fuck. It also like it also depends on like, you know, what other resources would I have? Like, are we talking about start over again in 1996? Or we start over again in 2026? Because things have changed a lot during that time, and I didn't have the kind of guidance back then. Like, I really figured out what I was able to figure out, but I didn't know a lot, or what it was that I really needed to know how to do. I was able to figure out things. Yeah, sure. I built some QBasic programs. I learned how to write HTML. Had my own website as a teenager. But there's a lot that I wish I knew back then to like get started on game dev before. And honestly, I would be pushing myself to work entirely in C++ the whole time. Like, if I had stuck with C++ from high school till now, oh man, it'd be so brutal. It'd be like way more brutal. Raylib is pretty great as a tool. It's actually something I would recommend like beginners kind of fuck with. Okay, that's not quite what I was looking to do. Oh, 3-0. And then this should be 2-0. C++ for sure. Okay, that's good so far. I don't know why I spent 4 years to learn programming basics. Because it takes 4 years to learn the basics, dude. Like, you know, you can't build anything until you have the basics. And that said, there's a lot of basics that you straight up won't ever use. because the things that you're building don't call for them. But in order to build really good systems, you have to have all these basics down. It's just how it is. What about business side? Did I sell software tools, SaaS, before? No, for the beginning of my post-college career, I was freelance iOS dev at first. Then I got into corporate briefly. And then corporate again briefly. And then I've been tutoring online for like the last 10 years. Business side, I mean, I didn't do the business side. You know, that's normally not what I do. Although as I've gotten older, I realize I probably need to do some business side. But as a young 20-year-old man, that was not what I was doing. You know, I was coding professionally, making things for other people who did business stuff. SaaS was a term that like just came into existence when I became a professional developer. It wasn't really like a concept. You know, the term cloud became more prevalent when I was in college. And it's the kind of thing where, you know, the running joke back then is there's no such thing as the cloud. There's only other people's computers. So when I did corporate, I worked for a company that did a lot of point of sales applications. We made mobile point of sales for different businesses. I worked on a few corporate projects for brand names that you've probably seen advertisements for. Can't tell you which ones they were due to NDA, but you know, they are big companies. So I don't know if that answers your question or if you have any sort of different expectation for what a professional mobile software developer does for a company when you're working for them. But I wasn't that high up in the chain or anything like that. The people who were didn't do a lot of active development. What they did was they ran around having meetings with people all day and securing new clients and growing the amount of business that we were doing, which that's a hustle in and of itself. And it's not necessarily, in my opinion, the most fun hustle. But when you have a pattern of success that works, you definitely want to replicate that and keep things going. And eventually that company got bought out after I left them. And nobody who worked for that company still works there. Everybody's gone off to different things. One of my coworkers now works at Signal, which I think is fucking fire. Another old coworker from back when I worked for the university now works at X. And I'm in the middle of interviewing for companies right now, but one way or another, whether or not someone picks me up first, or this game comes out first, or I pop off some really fly bug bounty shit first, one way or another, something's gonna pop off. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna get back to working on stuff because I've already been on for about an hour and a half. And I'd like to focus on actually making progress. So we're going to attempt to automatically place a door here. Well, we're setting the location to be a good door location. But over here, now we have to uncomment place doors so that it actually goes through, checks to see if a tile is marked as being a good door location. I am. I'm on Bug Crowd. You can look me up. Last I checked, I'm... I forget what my rank was last time I looked. $1869. That's my current it's my current rank. Well, it's not definitely just for fun, but it's also not full time. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten the kind of success in bug bounty that I'd like. And that's definitely not for lack of trying, but I also have a bit of a mental disconnect when it comes to making regular sustained progress. I've gotten lucky. I'll say that much. The things that I have found were kind of miracles of discovery. And of course, I wouldn't have found that stuff if I hadn't looked, right? But at the same time, sometimes you be hunting and you hunt for days and weeks and months sometimes, and you won't find shit. And you can't sustain a life on that. You know what I mean? You can't pay bills if you're not finding shit. You can say, oh, maybe you're just not looking hard enough. And it's like, well, that might be true. Maybe there's something about my process that needs upgrading. But I've gotten some payout. Not a lot, but some payout. One of them paid out really well. Another one actually paid for my rent 1 month. But finds are very few and far between. And I'm certainly not finding enough that I can actually make sustained regular income doing it. Maybe that'll change. Maybe once I kind of have a light bulb moment about like how I should actually be looking for things. But I like doing automation, and automated systems are fun. I like building stuff more than I like looking for bugs. I like game dev more than I like looking for bugs, honestly. But that said, though, there are ways to make bug bounty fun. All right, let's try this out. Oh no. He spawned on a door. Fuck. No, now the door's not showing up. Why is that? Oh wait. I don't know what you mean by return to C. You know, by using C++, you never leave C. By using C++, you never leave C, dude. I don't know, like, what's the problem that you have with C++ that you keep asking about C? So you don't have to tell me how great C is. I already know. But do I need to tell you how great C++ is? See, with bugs like that, raylib, you have to escalate it by showing impact. It's not enough to just find something like that. You have to actually be able to do something with it. You have to be able to demonstrate that you can make something bad happen with that vulnerability. Look, just use C++, dude. Just use C++. You don't have to use every part of C++. You can write C++ in a C-style way. In fact, I believe this is what John Carmack advocates for. Just use C++, write C, and where there are opportunities to use C++ features, try them out. See if they work for you. That's all you gotta do. Don't make it too hard. You're overcomplicating it. For some reason, my door placement function is not placing a door. Which means interesting. Well, I think it sounds like you have some ability to take over mod accounts. And they counted that as only informative. I think you should definitely talk about it in public. Put some pressure on them. Maybe provide some demos. Show people that they're able to do this. And when a lot more people start exploiting it, they'll be pressured into having to do something. I tried, but when assembly code, they are different. Like in C++, you can name two functions, the same thing, but different args. That get that really tricky when checking linker symbols. Yeah, I forget what the term for that is. Function overloading, I think. And it's really more important for classes than anything regular functions, although you might be able to overload regular functions as well. But the point being, no. So name mangling is what happens underneath the hood. And actually, it's funny you mentioned that. The reason that I initially migrated back from C++ to C long ago was because of the name mangling that happened underneath the hood. Because I was fucking around with using shared libraries to be able to instantly load the game on the fly, like hot reload, in order to like make development kind of faster. I thought this was a great idea at the time because by not introducing the name mangling, by moving everything back to C, I was much more easily able to access the contents of the shared libraries without having to like do any sort of crazy bullshit, right? And this worked for a while, but then I realized, you know what? I'm not actually using the library, so the hot reloading as much as I'd like. Why do I even need it? And I was like, fuck it, let's go back to C++. And function or method overloading or function overloading is related to this, right? But one way that you can kind of get around it is by naming, like if you're working with functions specifically, to name the function something that makes it kind of clear what parameters you're passing to it. This will help with having to remember like type signatures on functions. So as an example, so here we have two functions that have been overloaded. One of them is a tile constructor. It takes no parameters. The other is a tile constructor that takes 2 parameters. So this is an example of function overloading where the functions have the same name, like the constructor is the same name, but you have different parameters that you can pass to one or the other. And this is valid C++. So you can have lots of other functions that work in a similar way. I don't know if I have any other good examples here. I'm not sure why that matters either for your particular situation. Like, why would it matter whether or not the names get mangled underneath the hood? Unless you were like attempting to export out like assembly code and then work with that directly. I'm not sure. Honestly, the switch over is not as bad as I think you're making it out to be. Start small. Maybe, I mean, in particular, the reason that you want to migrate to C++ is so that you have access to the STL. The standard template library is so good. Vectors are so good. Unordered maps are so good. Like, they have it. Even have functional programming shit that you can't do very easily at all in C. So you really open up the gates. You know, you can really stretch your wings with C++. C will keep you tethered to the earth. C++ will set you free. Hell yeah. No, shout outs to my Twitch chatter first time. What the fuck, blub. Lambdas and constant expression by far the best reason for using C++. Definitely. Constant expression, I'm loving it. I've started using it where I can. Good times. Doing some quick cleanup here. Yeah, see, we can even get an entity on the tile in a constant time. We can even, you know, constant expression get whether or not something is a wall. Might have to probably take my baby out here in a little bit. And I should honestly make myself a sandwich or something. Okay. All right, those are all cleaned up. So with place door, what's going on here? Why is it saying that something can't have a door? Oh, I think I know why. Here's what we'll do. Or make a room that's a 3x3, and another room that's a 3x3. And then at location 2-1, we'll have a connection between the two rooms. Thanks, K-Dud. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Oh, they're too close together. Damn it. Wait. Whoops a doodle. This would need to be at 4. And this would need to be at 3. So for some reason, this loop is not honoring this set can have door. Probably because this algorithm's failing now for some reason. There we go. See, there's a bit of a logic issue with the lighting system, but I will fix that after I piss. Okay, I am back. I'll probably be bouncing in and out of the chair for the next few minutes, though. Saying hi to my animals and making them snacks. Let's see, how long do I have until I have to meet with the students? Student meeting time is 5. So I've got 3 hours, 20 minutes. So somewhere around like the last hour, I'll probably end up signing off. Okay, so I discovered an interesting bug there. All right, so let's open up the draw. All right, so draw dungeon floor. Some of the graphics functionality in this game. So there's draw dungeon floor tile and then entity type, right? So this is only returning true if the tile type is a wall. Didn't need this second check right here. Okay, I think this will render correctly now. Okay, that looks correct. Oh, we have to add it for the other function as well. Oh. That's a bug. We shouldn't be able to see the orc at all. Now, something interesting I'm thinking about is when we load into the room, because the player's light radius and visibility is kind of jacked high at the moment, even though we haven't actually discovered those rooms, or like we shouldn't be able to see into the room, even to see like the grayed out tiles, right? So one thing that would be interesting to look at is applying some of those blocking mechanisms to the update tiles explored, right? Ugh. So update player tiles explored goes through and manually marks a tile, or actually a group of tiles surrounding the player, to make sure that they've been discovered if they are within the player and that sort of thing. But where were those checks that we were just at? Oh yeah, in the render, right? So over in the rendering, we have these checks that we have to do when we're looping through. So like, given a path with thickness, find up here, this should actually be in a separate file, and then we'd be able to use it. So like, given a start point and end point, this finds like a line from point A to point B and then returns that path so that we can step along the path and see if there's anything blocking us in that process. So as a first step here, Now we can use that function outside of libdraw dungeon floor. In fact, because that's an old file, make sure that builds. Okay. So why did we do that? Oh yeah, yeah. So for every tile, for every location in the set of tiles that we're going to be updating whenever the player moves around, we give it a start position and an end position, and and we'll get a path for every. Oh man, this is going to be expensive. Um, we have to calculate a path from the player to that point and then check to see if there's anything blocking. Hero location. Okay. She gotta go back out again. Okay, let's try this. Is off here. Oh, wait. This would be another one of those cases where caching would be advantageous. Okay, so we also have to check to see if the door is open, right? Set a super small hearing and vision distance. That'd be fun. You know, looks good so far. Doodle. I messed up there. Oh, there we are. That feels pretty good, actually. I think it might be time to take a break for lunch, y'all. I'm just building what I want. I think the idea of doing market research is fucking disgusting. One of my favorite genres of game to play is dungeon crawler and roguelike and RPG in general. So that's what I want to make. In fact, I wanted to make it before I knew it was my favorite. If I were trying to pick genre by what's most popular, or if I were to try and make the same kinds of games that are like topping the charts, I don't think I'd have a very good time doing that. You know, like, are you out there trying to be a capitalist and, you know, really take advantage of people? try to make things that just sell? Or are you actually trying to make something that's fun, engaging, and true to who you are as a person? I think that's the real question that should be asked. And if you're thinking about it differently, then it's like, sure, go out there and try to make like the next big popular game and have a good time doing that if that's what you want to do. But if that's, it's like at a certain point, you know, what is artistic integrity, right? Like, what is like being true to yourself? What does it mean to have this, like, why should we have to choose between like what we want to make ourselves and what's most popular? I don't think that's a great choice to have to make. I think it's better to make what you want to make, regardless of whether or not you think it's going to be popular or not. Because if you make something good, people will play it regardless. You know, like, there is a subset of people that play things just because they're, you know, the current popular game. But then there's people that play games because they're good games. And I think that's really what sets things apart, because I saw my friends just hop from game to game to game to game to game to game to game, and they never stuck with any one game other than like a handful that we would always come back to. And the ones that we always came back to were the ones that were the most fun. They were ones that were the most engaging, that brought us the best times. So why waste your time trying to make something that someone else is going to like? Or rather, why waste your time trying to make someone else like your thing? Because they're going to like it whether or not you try to make them like it, right? Or they won't like it. They're like whether or not, I mean, in fact, you might even make people like your thing less by trying to rope them in like that somehow. And what I'm making here is authentic and true to my spirit as a gamer and a creator. I hope that answers your question. I think it's about time for me to take a break, though. My dog wants my attention. I think we need snacks. I need food. And I could probably give myself more time before my student. We've been on for about 3 hours already, so I think this is where I call it a day. If y'all haven't done so, please go check out the current demo. It's a little bit old at this point, but I'm currently in the process of putting things back together. Until next time, everyone. Take it easy.